Welcome to Connecting the Dots, an Amici podcast presented by me, George Mingozzi-Marsh, where each episode I meet with an artist and chat about their community, collaborations, and how these connections continue to shape the artists they are today. If you're watching the video version of this podcast at Amici.Art, then keep watching at the end for some bonus footage from my studio visit. In this episode, I speak with my friend Jane Hayes Greenwood in her South East London studio on the eve of her solo exhibition Weird Weather that has just opened up at Ione Mann Gallery in collaboration with Castor. I always love speaking with Jane, and it was a real privilege to get to see these paintings before they're revealed publicly and to spend some time with her in her studio. As we discussed, these paintings were made through a particularly difficult personal time for Jane, and she's incredibly open and honest about the challenges and how that fed into these paintings, channeling her grief through the landscape of her childhood. In previous painting series, Jane has explored becoming a mother and being a mother, creating and nurturing life, often using plant and botanical forms to express this. And now, as she comes to terms with the passing of her own mother, the focus of her paintings pulls back, no longer the seeds, buds and sprout forms. Instead, we are engulfed by the vastness of the Yorkshire landscape and the wildness of its skies. With all this in mind, I wanted to start our conversation with the embryonic stages of Jane's interest and passion for painting, and to find out how early on in her childhood she engaged with the idea of being an artist.
I think like most kids, I was drawing all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember my mum's brother, my uncle, he worked in computers, so he used to bring back computer paper, you remember, with the perforated edges down the side.
I had the same thing.
So yeah, like printer paper that had errors on it, and so I was always drawing on that. But I think, it's pretty standard. But I was really encouraged. My mum should have been an artist, but ended up becoming a teacher because my grandma was a headmistress.
Right.
So my mum kind of didn't have a choice. She was pushed into having a proper profession.
Yeah.
But I think because of that, my mum was always really encouraging, and we were always making stuff at home, and I loved
home crafts and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And Art Attack and all those programs.
Yeah.
Even like Tony Hart.
Yeah, I love Tony Hart.
Yeah. Just old enough to remember all of that. So yeah, I've got 2 kids, so I see with them, children just have that innate desire to make stuff because it's fun.
Yeah.
So that was always there. And then my stepdad and my mum got together when I was 9, and he was quite heavily involved in art. So he supported Jonathan Silver in setting up Salt's Mill in Saltaire. And they were best friends at school. They went to Bradford Grammar together, and David Hockney was also at Bradford Grammar at the same time. So they knew Hockney. And obviously at Salt's Mill, they had that huge collection of Hockney's work, and Jonathan was a big supporter. And so Alan, my stepdad, used to come to London to Christie's to buy Hockneys in the auctions.
Right.
And
so there was kind of early access and exposure to the idea that art could be a profession and something you kind of do with your life rather than just something that was fun to do at home.
I think there was, even though I didn't recognise it as such at the time.
Yeah.
That was there. And we used to go to all of Hockney's previews. And then Alan stopped working. Jonathan died, sadly, of cancer. Right. So he stopped working at the mill and set up his own second-hand bookshop, but opposite the mill. Right. And above that, he had a gallery and showed local artists. So yeah, that it was around for me for sure. And he bought art, on a kind of small level, but he, from people locally, and we had lots of art in the house. There was lots of surrealism around. And yeah, we went to exhibitions and stuff, so it was definitely...
Was that then in turn sort of encouraged in you? Did they sort of, I suppose the kind of adults in your life, did they see that you had some sort of skill or passion towards this and encouraged you as something that maybe you could pursue or hadn't really?
It was, so I was always good at copying things, which obviously at a certain point in time you become quite self-conscious as a child, and you want to make something look like something. Yes. And that's actually quite a big status symbol at primary school if you
Yeah.
can be the one that can
Can
do that.
things. Yeah, of course.
And I remember at primary school we had house teams, and each week someone would be nominated from the team to write the number of points that team had scored each week.
Yeah.
And I was often nominated as the one who would like design the number or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily encouraged in terms of a profession, but it was just, I was quite good at school. I was quite academic.
Yeah.
But also I've got quite a strong internal emotional life as well. Yeah. And my childhood was pretty hectic. There was a lot of chaos.
So was that an outlet for you?
Yeah.
Even then?
Yeah. I think it
was there a moment, I suppose, I'm kind of interested in pathways for artists, because I think it's not necessarily something that's built into the school curriculum. And for a lot of parents, like, unless there's an example in their life of someone that's done it professionally, encouraging a child, or for a child to decide themselves to go on to art school and kind of pursue art in that way.
Yeah.
Was there sort of a moment that a kind of a door opened for you, or someone? And I know in my case there was a boy a couple of years older in school who'd gone on to art school, and I was like, oh, that's a thing. There's an art school.
Yeah.
Okay, right,
Yeah.
I see. What was that sort of moment for you that kind of took you to the next step along?
Well, my GCSE art teacher was absolutely useless. Terrible.
Name and shame.
Miss Greenwood, always in the pub. It was really bad, and there were no resources. I went to a very standard comprehensive school, and the resources for the art department were really bad.
As so many schools.
I then did A-level art. That was also terrible. But because I think of this outside influence, having that access meant that I knew that it was worth
You'd seen it was
pursuing,
possible.
and I loved it. Yeah. I had lots of friends, male friends, who were into graffiti.
Right. Okay.
So there was kind of that, more underground culture going on as well. So I grew up in Hebden Bridge, which is known to be a very creative place. Lots of my friends' parents were photographers or artists.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine, her parents are both photographers who were really good friends with Martin Parr, who photographed Hebden Bridge. So it was quite, there were lots of people around that...
Yeah, it was sort of in the air a little bit.
Yeah, that despite the fact that my art education was terrible, I knew that it existed as this...
Something you could do.
Really, this kind of positive force. When I got to A-level, it was that at that point, it was like, okay, what do you do next after that? My A-levels were quite a difficult time, personally. Things went slightly... It was just difficult at home. And so in terms of what the next step was, I didn't have parents who were thinking ahead for me in the way that some other people might.
Yeah.
But I did have conversations with them about wanting to pursue art, and my stepdad was like, what about Art Foundation? So I went to Bradford Art College, which was where Hockney had been as well. So
Yeah. So I mean, that's even, I guess, an amazing thing, knowing someone that knew what an Art Foundation was.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that existed as a thing, I suppose. I mean, if we could leap forward a little bit, you mentioned that as a young person you had this kind of, I suppose, technical ability, this ability to kind of reproduce and copy things, which I think actually for a lot of artists when they get to art school can be a hurdle in some ways, because you can kind of rely on that. Yeah. And I found certainly when I went to art school, not having so much of that, I was freer to be more kind of experimental and think about the kind of conceptual and theoretical side of my practice. At what stage did you find I suppose, a vocabulary for yourself and a kind of a conceptual backbone for what you were doing?
Probably not until degree.
Yeah.
It took a while. I mean, on my foundation is amazing because you get to do all of those different things. Yeah. I remember it was really the fine art painting pathway that I suddenly realised that there was something special in painting for me.
Yeah.
And we were painting still life, really traditional still life setup. But when I was painting it from life, I just felt this stillness. And I'm someone who has quite a busy brain. And it was basically accessing that flow state.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's quite addictive, that feeling of suddenly getting beyond yourself. And I was like, I want to do this more. So it was that hooked me into painting
Yeah.
and fine art, as opposed to graphic design
The many
or all
other
the
sort of
other
avenues you
things
could
that
go
it
down.
could have been.
Yeah.
But I remember even once I'd specialised in the fine art pathway, we had this really traditional painting tutor, Graham Wilson, who's now sadly died. And he set us up on a project. I can't remember exactly what the project was, but I came back with this really experimental collage one week, and he was really encouraging with that. He was like, I love how you're trying all these different things. It was quite wild. And then the following week, I came back with this very traditional kind of like Dutch still life drawing, and he was like, what's happened here?
Yeah.
And I think that's that thing of, you have a certain facility that's been recognised and validated in primary school. And it's seductive to make something look like something.
Yes.
So I was definitely figuring things out when I was on foundation, trying lots of different things, and continue to do so, I would say, until the end of my BA.
I mean, I suppose as long as I've known your work, been aware of your work, you've had this sort of use of the natural world botanicals as a way of reflecting women's experience, and particularly women's kind of bodily experience, and this kind of generative, kind of reproductive and that side of things. When did you sort of start, I suppose, looking inwardly or at yourself or at women more generally with what you were exploring in painting?
I think looking inwardly always.
Yeah.
Maybe when I started my MA in 2013, I was making a series of drawings. The title of that body of work is The Returned. And that was kind of riffing off Freud's essay, The Return of the Repressed.
Okay.
And that was a series of drawings of objects that I'd either found in museum archives, or things that I'd made. And they were all rendered in like very fine pencil graphite drawings. So there was this kind of combination, I think, in that series of work that was about something that was very sort of emotional and psychological, expressed as museological object. So I was thinking about them as artifacts, like psychological artifacts, things that might be sort of uncovered. So Freud talks about the archaeologist as having a job that's similar to the list, in that they both dig down and uncover these buried fragments. So that was the inward element, I guess, that's always been there. The Witch's Garden series of plant paintings started in like the end of 2017, when I was trying for my first baby.
Right, okay.
So that's obviously, thinking a lot.
So it was as simple as that. It was a kind of a life experience, or kind of going through that experience that kind of triggered a deeper interest in that side of things.
Yeah, I was making a series prior to that called If You Were the Last Man on Earth. So that was following a big solo show that was riffing off the Garden of Eden. So I was thinking about the Garden of Eden as a place which is bountiful and also very controlled. I'd made a giant love heart suite, so 8 foot by 8 foot sculpture that was based on the Swizzle suite. And following that exhibition, I had that classic, like, post-show blues.
Yeah.
What am I going to do now? That kind of emptiness that comes. But I was thinking a lot about symbols and the love heart symbol and where that comes from. And obviously it's like the heart, but I was researching and I came across what is very likely historical fake news, but I love it anyway, that said the heart shape comes from, that references a seed of a plant that is now extinct called silphium, which was heavily traded in the 7th century BC in the Middle East, and was both a contraceptive and an aphrodisiac.
Really?
And it's extinct. So I was
and it was that shape?
The seed was apparently the heart shape.
I've never heard that.
And so I got totally obsessed with that. And then silphium is extinct, but apparently it connects to the wild fennel family.
Yes.
So then I made a painting that was based on that was invented.
Okay.
And that went into another painting, but I really enjoyed.
So that was the kind of start of the kind of botanical, I suppose, the kind of plant interest, and then and linking that in with, right, okay, interesting. I mean, I suppose what I was, and you started explaining, I was interested in this idea that your practice has kind of evolved along with your stages of life, and when your responsibilities have changed, when your kind of, I suppose, your kind of experience of life has changed, and when your responsibilities have changed, when your kind of 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 responsibilities have role goes from being, you know, just yourself as a person and an artist to being like a mother and all these other things. We kind of have been able to chart that journey to a certain extent through your paintings in that time.
Yeah, I think it's just like art and life are so close for me. They're so interwoven that it only makes sense for me to make work about something that is meaningful.
Just feels natural to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like usually it's things that are something that I'm needing to work through or reflect on, something that's complicated that needs unpacking.
Yeah.
And then previously I've, like with the Witch's Garden series, I did a lot of research because I just found it so fascinating.
Yeah.
And the thing is with plants is that their histories are completely interwoven with ours. Like we rely on them for food, we rely on them for medicine. And yeah, historically, the kind of narratives and, you know, the way that they've been traded, there's just so much, it's the history of our lives as well.
Yeah.
That series definitely does chart my life and my experiences. Like I was at the start of that series, I was looking a lot at plants in relation to fertility, and then learning about how midwives who were often thought of as witches at a certain point in time, you know, kind of sat on the edge of society, these strange older women that knew about plants and bodies. And then that morphed into me having children and recently caring for my mum being unwell, looking at medicinal plants that are used as pain relief and all of that. So it is almost like a diary for me, at least. But there's lots that sits around that.
And what about your kind of peers, the influence of other artists on you? Obviously, you've curated shows. You had this kind of long-standing relationship with Block 336 and the kind of exhibition program that happened there. And of course, you kind of, you know, work along artists in the studio and show alongside other artists. Are there sort of moments or artists that you've kind of taken things from or learned from?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, with Block, which was an artist-run space that I founded with others, we presented over 40, commissioned over 40 large-scale solo exhibitions.
Yeah.
And the space there was 250 square metre main gallery space and then a separate gallery that was over 100 square metres. Yeah. So working with artists there at such an ambitious scale.
Almost an institutional level, some of those shows, they really were kind of big, and for a lot of those artists were kind of leading on to institutional shows.
Yeah, and so seeing them wrestle with the space, which, and the main space at Block is like one of Tate's small rooms. That it taught me so much. It really did. Like seeing the different ways artists manage space.
Yes. And
just work through ideas, and also professionally as well. Yeah, and then recently curating the show for Andy at Castor, The Nature of Things. That was really exciting. That turned into Andy convincing me that I should curate something, and me not having any time because I had 2 small children and other commitments, to it becoming like a 19-person group show because I just can't help myself.
And was that were those just sort of artists that you loved and you've been wanting to work with for a while, or did you take a slightly more kind of academic approach to that, as in you had this idea for a show in your mind and you went and found the artists that kind of fit into that sort of thing, or was it a little bit of both?
There was a bit of both, but I would say more the former.
Yeah,
really. But there were many artists in that show that I didn't know prior to the exhibition, so I really used it as an opportunity to meet them
and make connections.
I loved their work.
Yeah.
And I did studio visits with pretty much everyone.
Amazing.
So, travelled around the country and, it was fun.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, if we kind of move on, I suppose, to this newest body of work in this upcoming solo exhibition. I mean, these paintings are incredible. I feel like that goes without saying. But they also feel like another new chapter, another new development. We've gone from the kind of micro botanicals to kind of macro, where we're kind of in a landscape, and it feels like we're kind of referencing some of the great kind of landscape paintings of the first half of the 20th century, whether it's Nash or whatever. How how does this feel to you, I suppose? Let's start with that. Like, how do these paintings kind of feel to you?
Well, as you know, they came out of this period of really profound transition for me because I lost my mum at the start of the year. And last year, I should say. So they feel really important for me. And they're holding a lot. Like with the Witch's Garden series, I feel that the plants were containing so much, but you know, they were containing sort of thoughts and feelings and memories and research, but the kind of charge that was in those plant paintings, because I've always thought of them as characters, and William Blake talks about this sense of double vision that the poet has, and I think all kids have it, and I definitely have it, and I know many artists do, and I've spoken to Gareth Cadwallader about this at length, the kind of pareidolia thing of seeing faces in, you know, and characters in plants or whatever it might be, a jacket you know, hung over the back of a chair or whatever. It's something that's really, really strong for me. I anthropomorphise things, I just can't help it. So that kind of gaze that was in the Witch's Garden series has been turned outward onto the landscape, so that the landscapes are now holding what I feel the plants were previously.
You kind of return to the landscape of your childhood, and you know, I don't think I mean, correct me, are these kind of direct references to that landscape? Are they kind of studies of that landscape, or are they kind of more kind of a summoning of?
Yeah, so I guess this one is probably the closest to some of the Calder Valley landscape. So yeah, I mentioned that I grew up in Hebden Bridge, and my mum's house is about a mile out of the town, Old Town. So it's like you drive up the valley. So I grew up in this weaver's cottage with this incredible view looking over to Hepton Stall. It's like really, really beautiful valley. I mean, it's very well known for its rain, Calder Valley. But you have these amazing weather systems that are constantly moving through. Yeah. So in the morning, something that's very typical in that area is these cloud inversions. So the cloud will sit compressed because of all of the hot air above it in the valley before it starts to rise. And you have all weathers in a day quite frequently. My mum was ill with cancer in 2024, 2025, so I was up there a lot. My relationship with her was really close. And so I was going through this really deeply profound experience of caring for her, losing her, having all of the sort of anticipatory grief. Outside of her bedroom window is this just astounding view. And often I felt like what was going on outside was mirroring what was going on internally. Yeah, it's like a bit cheesy to talk about internal weather, but it really did feel like there was this...
Is it pathetic fallacy? Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Like a literary term.
Yeah. The moorland, which is above her house, like 5 minutes walk, it's pretty brutal for most of the year, apart from in the summer when the heather's out. But I would be, you know, when I was up there, kind of getting up onto the moors, walking. So yeah, all of that is sort of in here.
We spoke previously about when you first sort of came back to making paintings after your mother's death, and the kind of challenge you felt, particularly returning to older paintings or an older style of paintings. Do you mind talking a little bit about how you kind of, I suppose, found this? Because there's a new way of handling the paint here. Like, they do feel different. Like, there's obviously a continuation, but there is something kind of new in this that has come out of that experience.
Yeah, I mean, when I was travelling to and from, so I'm based in London, when I was travelling to Yorkshire to be with her, I was coming back with having done lots of walking while I was there when she was asleep, to just like escape the house and be outside. I was wanting to make drawings, but I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I still haven't really worked out why. It was just too poignant. It was too emotional, so I just couldn't do it. So it was only after she died in March, April, that I was even able to start making the drawings. And then it was just like, I just couldn't stop making
Really?
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like that.
You just kind of needed to get something out.
It was just like an expulsion, yeah.
Yeah. And were you kind of thinking about them? Was it kind of were they planned, or you were just sort of doing them?
A bit. I mean, yes, but it was very like emotionally driven.
Yeah.
As well. So I draw with the kids at home, and we're like messing around, and it was sort of coming through in those. But I couldn't, because of this kind of, I don't know how to describe the energy, but because of the energy, I couldn't make these really full paintings anymore. I needed to work at a larger scale.
Yes.
Because it was just like the sort of grandeur of what I'd experienced couldn't
be contained in these tights.
No. And I needed to move the paint around more. And it was something to do with the energy that I was experiencing. This kind of discomfort, like anxious, like it's not anxious exactly, it's hard to describe.
No, I completely see it. And I think I mentioned Nash, and I said when I first saw these paintings that they reminded me of the generation of painters who were painting just after the First and Second World War, and had gone from that early, the avant-garde of maybe kind of autism and stuff, and were now falling back into being in the landscape and trying to find sense of what the kind of grief they felt in this kind of landscape. And there really is a sense of that in this, something that is kind of epic, but also, completely relatable and kind of grounded, something that kind of everyone can find a kind of connection with, I think. And, they are kind of remarkable paintings, I think. Yeah. Have you found, not just with this body of work, but including this body of work, that your motivation for making painting has changed over the years? I mean, looking right back at where we started this conversation to kind of now, kind of why you paint and what it does for you, has that kind of changed over time?
I mean, it develops, I guess, depending on where you're at in life. But I see the way my kids draw. I mean, something that I have thought about since the kids, so my eldest is 5, my youngest is 4. Something that I've thought about since seeing the eldest really begin to express what she's experiencing through the world, through drawing in such a direct way. Yeah. I mean, it's like that old Picasso quote, it's like about it taking a lifetime to learn to draw like a child. Yeah. It's, we hear it all the time, but it's become a cliche for a reason. Yeah. Yeah. And you really understand it once you have kids. I feel like I'm trying to get back to that, really. I think in art school you can lose your way a little bit and think that you have to have that academic context and,
think too much.
Yeah, and I'm like terrible for that. I'm like a total overthinker, and often live in this I live in a semi-permanent existential state of awareness.
I can relate.
Yeah, but yes, it's changed, but I don't know how.
It's just something that's always been there for you.
Yeah, it's just a need, and I mean, it's not a sensible thing to do, is it? Not really. But it is important, and I learn from it, and I love it, and it connects me to a world that I love and hate sometimes as well. But let's stay on the on the positive side.
Well, I mean, while staying on the positive side, how do you feel now, kind of days away from installing this exhibition and presenting it to people?
Well, I'm feeling good because the work is finished. I'm happy with it. Yeah, I'm feeling good, actually. I can say that honestly.
Great.
I'm excited.
Thanks so much for talking to me. This has been great. I'm looking forward to seeing the show.
So nice to talk to you.
I wanted to thank Jane for speaking with me and for being so open and candid. I'm sure there are many artists and other creatives out there who can relate to the impulse to channel their grief through their creative process. And I hope that all of you get a chance to view Jane's solo exhibition on at Ione Mann in London until the 7th of March. If you enjoyed this episode, you can go back and listen to the first season of Connect to the Dots now at Amici.Art. And here is a little bit of additional footage that I took during my studio visit with Jane.
Well, do you know what mammatus clouds are?
Tell me.
Maybe you even saw them over London. So exactly a month before my mum died, there were these amazing clouds over London at sunset. So late February, in fact, yeah, so almost a year ago. These very sci-fi, bulbous, like the strangest things you've ever seen were filling the sky. I was just like, oh my God, what are these things? And everyone was posting it on Instagram, and I looked it up, and the name of the clouds, mammatus, so it comes from the Latin mammary. And so it was really poignant not knowing that they were called mammatus clouds, because it was just like the most kind of sublime, striking experience seeing this thing. But then finding out that, because they're udder-like, so that's, obviously where the kind of breast reference is coming from. But yeah, suddenly knowing that just felt so kind of personal for me. And you have these moments if you're in like a very emotional state. Things that go on in the outside world just like suddenly feel really personal. So yeah, it was pretty spectacular though.